What's up? Once again, it's on. Welcome to the Back to the Future Part 1, Part 2, Part 3 review. The flux capacitor. The ultimate box set of Back to the Future, which comes with everything, fully loaded, and the flux capacitor. The entire history of Back to the Future. Not only do you get the supreme booklet behind the scenes shots, it also comes with all the information that you guys were never told. Of course, you know about Eric Stoltz being the original Marty McFly and how that didn't McFly over with everybody. He just wasn't getting it. And it even comes with the animated series, which I hear was pretty cool. But we're here for the trilogy of Back to the Future. Oh, you want me to go to bed, Marshall? All right, cool. Let me go to bed. Forget it. He said go to bed. Now, I could either go to bed or I could do this. It's up to y'all. Y'all want me to go to bed? And just have y'all here all night watching nothing while I go to sleep? Or you want me to do this? It's your choice. All right. Back to the Future Part 1. Steven Spielberg and Robert Zemeckis. Now, what you didn't know is Robert Zemeckis was a real freak. People didn't like him. There was a lot more into Back to the Future that you didn't see. Woo! Girls with big boobs everywhere. They really wanted to promote that in Back to the Future when it first got started. And they couldn't really get the actor Michael J. Fox who they wanted to get because he was filming Family Ties. Now, going into this whole thing with Robert Zemeckis getting Eric Stoltz to play the role, Eric Stoltz just didn't have the quality of the humor that Michael J. Fox brought to the character. Now, with that being said, there was a lot of problems on the set with one of the main actors who played the father of George McFly. To me, he was very crucial to the entire film. Because without him playing George McFly, the movie don't really take off. You need his demeanor, you need his acting, and that guy brought everything to the table. He was the glue to make it go. Because without him being so dominant and so fearful of Biff and afraid and dealing with inner fear of even challenging to ask questions. Oh, he was very good. This is a classic shot. Doc, Einstein, and Marty McFly. That's a classic photo. But anyway, going into the picture, Robert Zemeckis had lost a lot of money going into this film. Because they lost all this film and days they shot on doing Back to the Future with the concept. Spielberg's getting behind it, but this is really Zemeckis' project. So when they came up with it, to go back to the year, they had to really think of the year to go back to be able to pull this off scientifically. They were going to use electricity as the key. Like, he has to wait on a storm. The storm hits the car and takes the car, and he travels on an electric pulse. They end up going from that strategy to plutonium, but using the electricity to bring him back through time. But originally, in the original script of Back to the Future, that was how he traveled in time. They had to like simulate some type of electricity to send the 1.21 gigawatts through the flux capacitor that you see right here and boot somebody back into time. So it's like riding electricity through a vortex. Now, let's analyze the movie part one. Going through part one, Marty McFly is at a crossroads. He doesn't want to become like his dad. He wants to actually be something in life and actually start out, get a band, be successful. He wants to get out of there. He wants to get out of the town. He wants to make it. He don't want to be confined in one small area. So he's always working with Doc, who's always got these inventions. He wants Doc to make his sound just extra so he can, become a rock star. So he wants to take his girlfriend out, for the weekend and spend time with her. And he's like the opposite of his dad. Like where he's from, he's kind of the cool kid on the block. Where his dad and everybody else was not. And his family was like in ruins of what could have been. His family resembles a lot of families that you've seen in life where other decisions would have made, they went the other way. It was one freak incident that made her fall in love with him, so she basically felt sorry for the guy, and she ended up falling in love, and they had kids. But if looking back, she's like, would they do it all again at this point? Because neither one are living the lives that they wanted to live. The dad has become a miserable shell of himself. And it all goes back to the one incident where he was completely being bullied by Biff. And years down the road, the bullying still happened way after school. Biff is still doing whatever he wants. Bossing the whole family around. And the dad is still the same submissive person he's always been. And he always wants the dad to stick up for himself, and the dad doesn't. Where Marty, he has sort of a temper. Where if someone dares him, he feels like he has to prove them wrong. Now, going back to this moment where they had Einstein, Doc is working on this different thing. He's supposed to be making a bomb for the Libyans. But he was working on a secret project with this time machine, the flux capacitor, and he's invented time travel. So he was getting ready to go back in time, do all these different things, and the Libyans show up. And he want Marty there to record it with his camcorder, because this is 85. This is when the camcorder was really becoming prominent. Because before they just had the big cameras, the ones that had to sit on your shoulder. This is the one you could hold it in your hand. So this is the first time really this was like kind of featured in a film. A camcorder, and you can hook it up to the TV and play it. So that was big back then, because in 85, nobody really seen too much of that. So they get in there. And he goes back to 1955 because the Libyans show up and try to kill him. Now he's back in time. Now he's got to try to get back in time. And that was the name of the original script, Back in Time, because he's trying to get back in time. So they end up changing the name to Back to the Future. And because I think Back in Time was copywritten and some other things, so they said Back to the Future. And people say, well, that don't make any sense, Back to the Future. And when you see the movie, it makes sense because he's got to go, he's in time back, so now he's got to get back to the future. So it made sense once people watched it. I hope you guys didn't fall asleep on me. People looking like, what movie is he talking about? So while he was in there, he knew he had to find one person that could help him. And the only person that could help him was good old Doc. Doc Brown. Doc Brown is the only living person that can help Marty. And you might say, why is Doc the only one? Because Doc's the only one who believes him. And it just so happens this is when he came up with time travel. When he fell and bumped his head. And he told Marty the story. And good thing Marty remembered it because it got Doc involved. And here they are stuck in 1955, where he accidentally interferes with his mother and father meeting. When she hit him with the car and she felt sorry for him and brought him home. But he ends up hitting Marty with the car, which is her son. And now he's at a risk of not being born. Because that interaction of where they were supposed to meet didn't happen. And now he's got to repair the bond between his father and his mother. That was the key of the movie. That was the key heart essence of the movie. Not the fact that he's got to get back in time. That was just the big piece and the climax to it. But to fix a broken situation. And by fixing that broken situation, he also gave his father something his father never had. Self-respect and belief in himself. So his father learned to stick up for himself, to have respect for himself. So his life was different once they figure out a way to get him back in time. He goes back. Doc was shot when he died. So he tried to go back in time before Doc got shot. So he could warn Doc that the Libyans was going to shoot him. But he had written a letter before he left. And Doc tore it up because he said, if I know too much about my future, it could ruin it. So when Marty left, he taped the letter back together and read it. And he put on a bulletproof vest when they came to shoot him. So Doc lived. And when he gets back, he see things have changed, different. His whole family's different now. His father's very successful. He's written sci-fi books based on the trip and the visit he had when Marty came. He thought he was visited by aliens. It was actually Marty, his own son. So that motivated a creative spark to keep him writing. He's got all these best-selling books, and now Biff is a person that's cleaning the cars. And become the same scumbag he's always been. But self-confidence is what he didn't have, and that's all he did, and then it inspired him and definitely is enriched his entire family. And it was funny, he went back and met his Uncle Joey, who was imprisoned when they were in 1985 originally. Uncle Joey, they had to eat the cake because he didn't make parole. So when he went back in 1955, his Uncle Joey was a baby. Uncle Joey was a baby in the playpen. He was like, "You better get used to these bars, Uncle Joey." That was a funny part. I crack up. So you're my Uncle Joey. He's that little baby. You better get used to these bars, pal. Classic line. Classic line. Then they had of course the Enchantment Under the Sea dance where he does Johnny Be Good, and which is a good knock to Chuck Berry, but it's pretty funny to me. They make it look like Chuck Berry stole it from the white guy, which is funny. Because Marlon Berry, his brother, was actually performing, and he called his brother Chuck Berry. "You know that new sound you was looking for? Here it is." I'm like, now that's funny, because everybody that stole from Chuck Berry. So now it's pretty funny that they had it done that way. But anyway, he goes back and see that times have changed. Then at the end, Doc takes him into the future. They never had a plan on making a sequel. It was just done out of fun, like, "Where we going, you don't need roads." He's like, "Oh no, y'all are fine, but something's got to be done about your kids, Marty. Something's got to be done about your kids." So everybody's like, "Whoa, what's going on with their kids?" So when they went back to the future, they never intended to do a sequel. It was never intended. Part 1 was done. It became the biggest hit of the summer, the biggest soundtrack, everything. It was just huge. And years go by. I mean, years. Michael J. Fox only signed up for one film. He didn't want to do a sequel. People, they came back and approached him with a sequel, and he didn't want to do it. He was doing other films. He did Casualty of War. He did a lot of other films, but they didn't take off, like The Secret of My Success. And these films just weren't making money. They were good films, great films. And they just didn't make money at the box office. And it was sad because they were pretty good. Then they brought the approach of doing a sequel. The money was too great. They offered Michael J. Fox a check he could not refuse. They were like, "Look, you're not doing that show no more. The movies you're doing ain't making $5 at the movie theaters. People want to see you be Marty McFly." He's like, "I don't want to do Marty McFly." So I think he was doing something called The Light of Day. I could be wrong. But anyway, they came and talked to him. There was a big fallout with this sequel because the guy that played George McFly, the actual actor, they took him out, did some type of computer enhancement, and tried to make the other actor look like him after they replaced him, because him and Robert Zemeckis didn't get along in the first film. But when you're going to do a sequel and you're going to have this other actor come in and computer analyze his face, you violated everything. So he sued them for that. And they finally lost the lawsuit. They finally settled with him because that was so disrespectful to do. Because they casted another actor, a more experienced actor, that you've seen. I think it wasn't Ali Sheedy. It was Elizabeth Shue. That's who it was, from Adventures in Babysitting. She became Marty's new girlfriend. The girlfriend in part 1, they didn't bring her back because she was going to have a more extensive acting role. So when you bring somebody in for a more extensive acting role, you have to have somebody in there with a lot of experience in acting. So they brought her in to be the actual catalyst of the film to help out Marty. And because she had a lot of experience acting, this would be a good mix. That's what they thought. So they bring in Elizabeth Shue to work with Michael J. Fox. and they bring in a new actor to play George McFly. And they were like, well, because it was supposed to have been a bigger scene with George and the wife before Marty went back in time when Biff was like, what's going on, flying DeLorean? What's going on around here? There was going to be a scene, an actual interaction with Biff and the dad, where Biff is thinking something's up and he's getting his brains and he wants to investigate. So when they go to the future, this was what they sold everything on. We finally get to see what the future looks like. And everybody's flying. You see everything's hologram. And it's weird because it's like that in like Japan right now. Everything is like holograms, all the writings, everything. It's really weird if you take a look at it. Then you have different situations like you see, and like the Cubs winning, they had Jaws, like Jaws 95 in there. So it was incredible at that time to see that happen. We saw the Pepsi, the one that they had, the Pepsi that they had in the future. We've seen the Nikes that people still want now today. The strapless shoes by Nike that lights up. Some people got the advances already and some people don't. Then the hoverboard. Oh, it was a merchandising monster. Back to the Future 2 was. Too bad it wasn't a good movie. It just was all over the place. All over the place. The movie was all over the place. I guarantee you. This movie, when they first get to the future, okay, when they get to this future, it lost the entire audience once they got there and the mission was, okay, we got to see what's going on with the kids. They didn't have anything interesting to do with the kids. Like, it was something really stupid and juvenile. Like, your son, who looks just like Marty, by the way. I mean, exactly like him. So he has to dress like his son. That is so dumb and so lazy of writing. I don't know what to do. I mean, to think about that. Like, he has to dress and look like his son and tell Biff no and don't go on this deal or this mission. Doc could have stopped all that from right then and there. He could have tranquilized the son, put the son in the trunk of the car. The son would have never went with Biff. He would have never needed to call Marty. I mean, this thing would have been over in 5 minutes. But but they gotta have a movie, and then they come up with this stupid idea of he has to dress like his son and tell Biff no. They just reenact the same scenes they did in 1955 with the skateboard scene downtown. So now they do the whole shooting of the scene in the same town, just that now he's using a hoverboard. Another lazy writing. I'm like, here we go again. You guys got the same thing, and here come the manure truck. And the guy, wait a minute. Old Biff, this looks familiar. I'm like, this is just lazy writing. Completely lazy. So they just rehashing everything old. Biff gets arrested. His grandson or whatever, Super Biff, he gets arrested. Marty's son wasn't even involved in it. He goes home. And Marty's a mess. And his wife is a shopaholic. Marty, he was in a car accident and injured his hand, so he can't play. So he's working with his buddy Needles. He just gets fired. Now, when Doc came and picked him up, he said, you and your wife was fine. It's your kids we got to worry about. Now we go back in the future. They realize, well, we can't just have it about the kids. Now let's make it Marty is screwed up too. So now Marty is screwed up. And I'm like, how wouldn't Doc know Marty is screwed up? Marty is not living great. The daughter is a mess. And it's funny because everybody had the phone. She had the glasses. I think that put the phone number on there. It's like she had the virtual reality glasses. They had a bunch of cool gadgets. It was good for merchandising and good for visual, but the actual plot of this movie was completely dumb. So now they were like, well, you can't let yourself see yourself or it can cause a big commotion in the galaxy. So Jennifer's there. And while she's there, she runs into herself when she gets stuck in her house because they found her knocked out in the alley. And they end up taking her home, and the cops did, and she sees herself. She falls out. They pick up Jennifer. Michael J. Fox get out of the vehicle. Biff steals the time machine. Doesn't know how to work it, but somehow goes back in time to 1955. Talked to old Biff. Talked to his old self. Gave himself the sports almanac that Michael J. Fox buys because he comes up with some stupid idea that, oh, I can go back and I can bet on all the games and I can make all this money. Why would he think that in part 2 when he could have did the same thing in part 1? I mean, the same parameters. He could have really just said, well, you know what? I could go back in 1955 and set my family up for life. He could have done that while he was there. If that was the case. So why would he think about doing that now? When he gets there, he's worried about a sports almanac. All he cared about was music, his band, and being successful. Now he was thinking of, let me just go back with all the winning numbers in the sports almanac and everything gonna work out fine. That's crazy. So now Biff, who never been in a DeLorean before in his life, gets in there, goes into 1955, comes right back, knows how to come back to where the same point he just was at, gets out of there, breaks his cane, and gets out of the vehicle. Now, why he handed himself the almanac? When he came back to that reality he came back to shouldn't have existed. That reality would have changed. When he went back in time, he would have not come back to that same point where Doc and Marty got back in the car. That would have never happened. All of that whole universe would have been changed. Because as soon as he handed himself that almanac, he wouldn't even, then when he went back in the future, the whole thing would have been changed. Because Biff was loaded. He wouldn't have been wearing them old man clothes no more. He'd have been completely loaded. Rich. Marty and Doc. Doc was locked up in an asylum somewhere. Committed. He had Doc put away and committed. But there's so many holes in this, because if he had that almanac in 1955, when did he have Doc committed? Because if he puts Doc in and gets him committed, Doc has to first invent the time machine, go back in time and do all this stuff to get old Biff the magazine, the sports almanac. If he doesn't do that, to go back in time, get Marty, they got to do the adventure and go back there. If that never gets done, Biff never gets the sports almanac. So that whole reality is gone. This thing has so many holes in it. It would not stand. It was so confusing. So confusing. People were like, I can't follow this movie. And I don't want to. Rich Biff And the mom with the fake boobs, and Biff, she married Biff. He got money. He done made her get married. And now he just tired of her. He's cheating on her all the time. And it's like, you married Biff? Yeah, Billy Zane was in it. And none of it mattered, but yeah, they were all in the movie. It became so dumb that there really wasn't a part 3. Part 3 was just a continuation of part 2. And the third act was actually better. See, people don't realize that they filmed this whole big movie in 6 months all at one time. All at one time. And it was not 3 movies. It was actually 2 movies. Part 1 they did years ago, and they did part 2, and a continuation that came on like 6 months later. It came out 6 months later. I remember going to see part 2, and I was like, oh man. They went back. It was something real weird. They couldn't land. They had the little strip. Doc got hit with electricity. When they went back to 1955, completely retarded. It almost destroyed the whole faction of everything in part 1. Now, his self is running around trying to do the Johnny Be Good. Then his other self is trying to stop the goons from attacking him. It's like the movie was all over the place, fellas. I don't know what to tell you except for I'm sorry. Part 2, if I had to rate it, part 1 is 4 stars. It's a perfect movie. Part 2, 2 stars. That's it. I give it 2 out of 4. Now part 3, which was really part 2, act 2. The Old West. This was actually a lot better than Back to the Future Part 2. From a story-wise, this was way better. It was better shot when they was in the Old West. A lot of the kids didn't like this one because it's the Old West, and a lot of kids didn't like Westerns. And they were just like, I don't like this. But by them going to the Old West and doing it, it made things simpler. It wasn't a lot of merchandising, a lot of marketing, and all of these things. So you lose out. That's why it was like 2 films. So it was all one deal. And it was smart to do it that way because they'd have got bombed if this wasn't a continuation point that came out 6 months later. But the Old West, where they had Biff in there, and then finally Marty got the message, like, this is what I need to do. Got over the fact of this new created, somebody challenged me. I gotta challenge him. And that's what led to his car accident because he couldn't say no to a challenge and went racing a car and got in a car accident and ruined his hand. So he learns his lesson there. But Doc falls in love knowing that first this lady was supposed to go over the cliff and die. And they named the bridge after her. But she doesn't go over the bridge. Doc saves her. So he's altered time. And Doc is in love with her, like, instantly. And he's telling Doc, like, Doc, you falling for this girl. And Doc's, no, I'm not. Next thing you know, Doc is all in. He's like, Marty, I ain't going back. I'm spending the rest of my life here with old girl. That is it. I am done. That is it. I'm spending my time with her. He was all in quick. So, naturally, he gets into it with Biff. So Biff wants to fight him one-on-one. And he runs into his old family member, which is played, of course, by Michael J. Fox. His old McFlys from way back in the day. And his cousins, and they're telling him about it. Like, hey, you got to watch your temper. You got to do this. You got to do that. We had an uncle, like I had a brother, like just like you. And he ended up dead, you know. So he was trying to help Marty right then, telling him to be smart instead of being stupid and always jumping into a fight. And what happened? He challenged to a duel or shootout or whatever. And he took Doc's place. And Doc Brown, he was going to shoot Doc. But Michael J. Fox, who calls himself Clint Eastwood, is going to take his place. But now they don't have anything in the Old West that can generate the type of speed to hit 88 miles an hour to get them to get the DeLorean back in time. And the DeLorean can't use any of the other stuff because the circuits were fried. Some type of stuff that was going in there. So he had to... What happened? I'm trying to think of what exactly happened. Yeah, he left the DeLorean in an artifact. Like it was like in a museum somewhere. Like he kept it there. So it'll be stored safely from 59. He wanted it stored there, and practically it was. But the storyline, the love story, the Western, it was all better. The town, you weren't going to miss out on too much anything. Now, when you go to the whole ending, where a train has to push the car, and then they got these explosive devices in there to help the train hit the 88. That's where you have your tension at, because then there's a fight scene on the train, and they trying to get Doc off the train and shoot Doc, and Doc's trying to go, because if they don't make it, let's say they don't hit 88 miles an hour, they can't bail out. They going over the bridge. So even when they go back in time, they'll be on the train tracks where the bridge is completed back in 1985. They'll be back home. So Doc stays behind. Doc was going to go with him, but Doc grabs the hoverboard, goes back and saves his girl, and just hovers himself out the way with the girl. And why he does that, Marty goes back to 1985. And then miraculously, here comes a big old train, and it smashes the DeLorean into pieces. So there's no more DeLorean, nothing. No more going back in time. Then what happens? A train comes. Right on the track. A time machine train. Conducted by Doc Brown. And he's got 2 kids. Got Einstein. Got another dog. Got a wife. And the train goes and flips over and shoots off into time. And that is how the saga ended. Now, they always talked about doing a part 4, but I don't think they should do one. The real Back to the Future is the first one. And it does not need to be duplicated. It should have never been done. Now, if they do another Back to the Future, it probably have to be some sort of remake. Because that story was so screwed up with 2 and 3 that you can't, there's no more web to untangle there. You got to kind of let that be. Now, with that done, tomorrow, we'll be tackling this. For my anime collectors. Anybody who knows anything about anime, tomorrow we are tackling this. It is going down tomorrow. See, we got it all out, and it's all laid. You gotta really know about anime to have this.